You know that person who never posts anything, no updates about their life. Maybe they're your friend, maybe they're your sibling, while everyone else is documenting their breakfast, their gym session, their vacation, their relationship, their emotions. They're just living it, not performing it, not packaging it, not asking for applause, just experiencing it. And the strange thing is, we've been taught to think that means they're missing out. But what if it's the opposite? What if they're not disconnected? What if they're free? Let me ask you something. When was the last time you opened Instagram or TikTok and didn't feel at least a tiny bit worse about your life? Not devastated, just slightly smaller. You see someone else's highlight reel, and your brain does this quiet comparison, their confidence. And even if you know it's curated, even if you know it's not the full story, your nervous system still reacts. Because your brain doesn't process social media as entertainment. It processes it as social reality. There's a sociologist named Irving Goffman who said something powerful. He said that life is like a stage, and we are all actors performing roles for an audience. Social media didn't create this idea. It just turned the stage into a stadium. With 1 billion people watching, every post becomes a performance. Every caption becomes a script. Every photo becomes a costume. And for some people, that feels exhausting. So they don't play the game. They step off the stage, not because they're antisocial, but because they don't want their identity to be shaped by applause. Psychologists talk about 2 types of self-awareness. Public self-consciousness, worrying about how you look to others, and private self-consciousness, focusing on how you feel inside. People who don't use social media tend to live in the second one. They don't ask, how does this look? They ask, how does this feel? They don't ask, will this get likes? They ask, is this meaningful to me? That difference changes everything. Because when you stop managing an image, you start developing a self. Think about how much mental energy it takes to constantly evaluate yourself through other people's eyes. Is my life interesting enough? Is my body good enough? Is my relationship impressive enough? Am I successful enough? Social media turns your identity into a product, and some people quietly refuse to sell it. There's a psychological theory called self-determination theory. It says humans are happiest when 3 needs are met: autonomy, feeling in control of your life; relatedness, feeling genuinely connected. Social media claims to offer all 3, but in reality, it often does the opposite. Your autonomy gets hijacked by trends and algorithms. Your competence gets measured in likes and views. Your relatedness gets replaced with reactions instead of real conversations. So when someone stops using social media, they're often trying to get those needs back, not by isolating themselves, but by grounding themselves. Here's something most people don't realize. A huge percentage of social media users are what researchers call lurkers. They scroll, but they don't post, not because they have nothing to say, but because their nervous system feels safer observing than performing. A study in Frontiers in Psychology found that people who experience high social comparison and privacy concerns feel more anxiety about posting. So their brain chooses the quiet role, not because they're weak, but because they're self-protective. Your brain's job isn't to make you famous. It's to keep you safe. And for some people, posting feels like exposure, like standing emotionally naked in front of a crowd. They build their identity offline. They invest in their inner world. And what's fascinating is this. People who don't use social media often have fewer friends, but deeper relationships. They're not surrounded by noise. They're surrounded by trust. They don't collect followers. They cultivate connection. They'd rather have one person who knows their real thoughts than 1,000 people who only know their highlight reel, and psychologically, that predicts happiness way more reliably. 10 real conversations beat 1,000 reactions. There's another layer here that doesn't get talked about enough. People who don't use social media are often highly observant. They notice shifts in energy. They notice when someone's tone changes. They notice what isn't being said. They don't broadcast. And because they're not constantly curating their own image, they have mental space to read the room, to reflect, to think deeply, to understand people instead of impressing them. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Social media trains you to look outside other people's lives, other people's opinions, other people's approval. People who step away from it turn inward. They ask themselves uncomfortable questions. What do I actually want? What do I believe? What matters to me when no one is watching? That's not avoidance. That's identity formation. Here's the part most people get wrong. Not posting doesn't mean not caring. It often means caring too much about real life to dilute it into content. Some experiences lose their power when you perform them. That conversation feels different when you're not thinking about how to caption it. That moment feels deeper when you're not holding a camera. That achievement feels richer when it belongs to you alone. There's a reason people say, be here now. Because presence disappears the moment you start documenting, and some people choose presence over proof. They don't need to show you they're happy. They just need to be happy. The same things social media promises, connection, validation, expression, are the exact things people who avoid it already have. They just get them differently. They get validation from their own values. They get expression through private creativity. They get a connection through real conversation. They're not antisocial. They're anti-performance. They're not hiding. They're protecting something sacred, their inner life. There's a quiet confidence that comes from not needing an audience, from knowing who you are, even when no one is watching. And that kind of confidence doesn't shout, it doesn't flex, it doesn't beg. It just exists. So let me ask you something deeper now. What would change in your life if you stopped proving it? If you stopped explaining yourself to people who don't know your story? If you stopped turning your moments into content and started letting them be experiences again? What would you hear inside yourself when the noise quieted down?